You know, throughout my life of trying to make sense of the deen of Islam, and by studying alternative philosophies and systems and also contemporary experience, what I've come to the conclusion of is that good systems come around. They generally are, they work for the people. And then the enemy has a problem with those good, sound social structures that emerge. I'm going to give you an example of the West, because people sometimes think I'm just anti-West. No, I'm not. I'm colorblind, and I'm also geographically, I have no obsession with the Middle East or with the East or with Asia. I love what is called Europe. I think it actually should be called Western Asia, but I love people, and there's no sort of underlying prejudice. And so I respect the West. I respect the role that the West has played. Okay, let's look for the moment away from the nasty aspects of the West. Now, I'm an anti-colonial scholar also, and believe me, I know what Western coloniality and Western colonialism is. It's a terrible thing. But it's not too different from colonialism that the Arabs practice, colonialism that the Romans practice, imperialism that the Japanese practice. So the white man, the European, is not distinctly evil or bad because it went on a rampage and took people's lands and took people's gold and whatever. I think you can go back to any nation, any area of the world, any corner of the world, not any, but most of them. And you'll find that, at some point the Chinese, the Mongols, were rampaging across the steppes and taking what from other people. You could even go to South America. I'm sure I don't know much about the history. You could go across Africa and see that, some nations went on the rampage and stripped other nations. So although I acknowledge the problem of colonialism and coloniality and Western imperialism, it's not a unique phenomenon amongst mankind. God doesn't say in the Qur'an that some people are innately evil. No, it's a tendency in anyone. I can become a brutal oppressor if I allow my soul to go down into the, if I let my soul deteriorate. So I acknowledge the contribution of the West. You'll be quite like, I look around me and I marvel at the achievements of Western civilization. Yes, I call it a civilization. People even tell me it's not a civilization. It is a civilization. It created a certain type of peace globally for many years. Although that peace wasn't a just peace, right? But there was some sort of semblance of a peace and some semblance of justice in some areas. The cornerstone that made the West successful, that gave them that drive, that flourishment, I think, is the divorce, is the breaking with the church, and the initial Reformation, and then further fissures or breaks from the church. And I believe that the West had something very powerful that made it great initially. And we're talking now coming into the 1500s, right? 1500s, 1600s, especially the 1700s. And what it had was this term called freedom. Freedom, personal freedom. Personal freedom as opposed to collectivism. The collectivism of the church, the uniformity of the church, because freedom it's a personal pursuit, right? It's a personal state of being. And the West, I believe, offered their people that, and that was a freedom to choose. And in fact, the Reformed churches, as are partially expressive of that freedom. Right? The Catholic Church, which functioned before the Reformed churches came about in Europe, was a highly controlled sort of worship and religious establishment. Whereas the Reformed churches, the Dutch Reformed, the Anglican, the Calvinist churches, these were all shifting a lot more freedom onto the individual worshipper, right? And so freedom, I believe, is a very, very important aspect of the success of Western civilization. And it allowed people to pursue business. It allowed people to worship the way they wish to worship. It allowed people to travel and to create a life that they wanted to create. And it basically unleashed the human spirit. And if you look at the people that went to the distant corners of the world and settled there, settlers, they were brave people. They were people that had brave spirits. But they were also ingenious people. They created out of nothing amazing communities, right? And so I salute those people. Remember what I said, I'm not defending the unjust or the, but you can't be anachronistic. You cannot be not conscious of the times. And if those people acted in a certain way which was dehumanizing other people, it was a crime. But it was a crime that needs to be judged according to those times. And we obviously, I'm one of the people that fought colonialism, that went to jail. So I'm not, don't tell me I'm pro-colonialism. I still am. You can look up my thesis on Google, Anwar Shaik thesis, and you'll find it there. I wrote a treatise on decoloniality. But what went wrong with the West? What went wrong? Because certainly the West is in decline. The West is in decline. It is there's no doubt about it anymore. We can see it. They've lost their minds collectively, not all people, but that culture, that ethos, that civilization, they've collectively lost the plot. If you can't say, I've seen these videos, these TikTok snippets and whatever about asking people what is a woman in America. No important person is able to answer the question except a few maybe. So when you can't say what is a woman, you've lost your mind, my friends. You've lost the plot. But that's not all. I think the whole gender confusion, the whole way they've messed up certain things is just sad. And they are in decline. Russia is taking their breakfast in Europe and they can't even do a damn thing in Africa. Poor countries are starting to snatch away their colonies from them, and they can't do a damn thing. China is growing and growing and growing and they can't do a damn thing. They have massive ships and massive armies, but these armies are useless because they are not a match for the brown man's ingenuity now, the brown man's vigor, the brown man's gusto. You see, the brown man is on the march and the white man is sitting there wondering, how to convince other people that a man is a woman and a woman is a man and a man can have babies, unfortunately, sadly so. But where did they go wrong? Where did they go wrong? Where did the West go wrong? I believe the West went wrong when they took the idea of freedom, when they took that idea, when they turned that idea and they perverted that idea. You see, and that should be a lesson for us. You take a wholesome, good, sound understanding, like the understanding of freedom, which means freedom to be whatever you want to be, freedom to pursue, freedom to travel, freedom to explore, all that notion of freedom. You take that amazing notion, which I endorse and support, and you corrupt it. You see, you corrupt it, you pervert it. You start saying that now we have freedom to do anything. You see, you have freedom to do the most abominable inhuman things. Like you now, and it's not the people, it's these forces that are there that are re-engineering society all the time towards slavery. You see, society is naturally, we love freedom, but there is a elite component that always want to re-engineer us towards slaving for them, being their slaves. And so when they saw this idea of freedom and the power it has, they needed to twist it, they needed to pervert it. And what they did was that they made it an ultimate concept. They took it beyond any boundaries. So now freedom for a woman is no longer the freedom to the beautiful things like explore, improve, grow, but the freedom to self-destruct. Now, self-destruction should not be a freedom. So now they tell young girls that sexual freedom is also a freedom, to sleep with as many boys as you like. And if you fall pregnant, taking your baby out, destroying the fetus inside, that's also freedom. It's a freedom of choice. So now freedom has been corrupted. And so now, and the man also, we now tell the man, freedom is not being faithful. You are free to explore extramarital relationships or multi-partner relationships. So what they've done effectively, and right now we are at the culmination of that madness where they've perverted the concept of freedom to the point where you are free to be any man can be free to become a woman. Even a child, boy, baby, is free to become a girl, and that is a right. They now look back at 500 years of great accomplishments, use the core idea within that 500 years, which is the idea of Western freedom, and they pervert it, they corrupt it, and now the elite is coming back at you. Because what has happened now is that society has failed. So by society, I mean the social connections, the social fabric has been damaged. I mean, I haven't been to the US, but I have close family that has traveled, and I've seen enough reality, not reality TV, but personal testimonies, to know that society is damaged. The fabric is damaged. People are no longer leaning on each other; they are leaning on the powerful in society. They need to go to the billionaire class for a job. They need to go to the billionaire class owns the politicians. The billionaire class controls the very air they breathe, the water they drink, the electricity, everything is controlled. And they are back to a feudal society. Because why are they back? Why have they lost their freedom? They are being taxed to death. And we're not far. We're generally 2 years behind America, right? We're in the provinces in the third world. And so what we are experiencing is the re-enslavement of humanity. That freedom is now only a distant dream. Because the beautiful idea, the beautiful notion of freedom, that beautiful social practice or social reality has been perverted. Now, I'm mentioning that to you as a case study, as an example of how Islam also had something beautiful in the early days. Something beautiful. And that beautiful thing that Islam had was a code. It was limits. It was a sense of restraint. Right? Taqwa, restraint, hudud, limits, operating without with restraint and without an unfettered greed, hunger, violence, love, passion. Islam came to say, listen, put a cap on your passions, your greed, your violence, your hunger, your pursuit. Put some sort of restraint on it. Become a modern, a civilized human being. Become a refined human being. That means zakah. Right? Become refined when it comes to sex and relationships become refined when it comes to your money and to spending. That is zakah. And the Qur'an said, Atu zakah wa aqimus salat, and become a conscientious, a people observant, an observant people, observant of the code. And how did they pervert and corrupt that? You see, any beautiful social phenomenon is corrupted by the elite who want to, because then people were free. You see, Muslims, Islam set people free. The golden age of Islam is about 100 years after the Prophet. That then comes the golden age, the age of discovery, the age of travel, of exploration, of the age of algebra, of astronomy, astronomical studies, the age of medical advancement. You see? So, but now how does the elite stop that? How do they nip that in the bud? By perverting the core idea, the cornerstone that makes that society great. And that is turning observance, turning adherence to the law into an extreme and unreasonably excessive practice. So instead of people observing the law on a few important things, sexual ethics, business ethics, social conscience or welfare, they actually added millions of rules to that, and they turned the code into a nightmare. It's the same thing that happened to the Mosaic law. You see, the Jews also got a certain law, and they were required to follow the 10 commandments and whatever. But then they added the Talmud, which is another 10,000 commandments besides the 10 commandments, and they made it impossible to be an Orthodox Jew. And today you get Jews that are saying, "Look, get to hell with all those rules. We just do what we like." And so they effectively destroyed Judaism. They effectively destroyed the essence of Islam. And so it is by perverting these beautiful core ideas. And Christianity the same. I can say the same with Christianity. See, Christianity is based on the idea. Jesus came to offer a relaxation of the extreme and unreasonable infringement that the Mosaic law was visiting or imposing on the people. And he came to undo that. His job was to undo the extreme imposition of the Mosaic law. Right? And he came to relax these things. And a thing like the Sabbath was being turned into a nightmare. You couldn't make yourself a peanut butter sandwich on the Sabbath. That is how crazy it went. You couldn't fetch something in the shed outside, to cut bread with or whatever. You couldn't fetch a bale of barley or whatever. So the Mosaic law became a nightmare, and Jesus came to relax it, to bring it back to what it should have been. That was Jesus' core mission, believe me. And what happened to him? The same that happens to us today. They want to kill us. They want to crucify us because they hate it when you come and you try and undo their perversion, their corruption. And by the way, Christianity, unfortunately, also fell prey to that. They took the idea of grace to the next level. The idea of grace, of God being forgiving and kind, is taken to the nth degree where you have no responsibility. But anyway, I think I've made the point. Why do we go wrong?